In the frozen heart of the Montana mountains, a battle-scarred Navy veteran and his loyal K-9 were ready to disappear from the world until a child's cry and two trembling puppies pulled them back into destiny. What they uncovered in the blizzard was not just a secret, but a
What
miracle that
in
would
the
change an
world is
entire town.
this? I have
This is
never
a
seen
story of
anything glow
courage,
like that.
of faith reborn, and of how even the smallest life can rewrite a broken soul. If you believe miracles still walk among us, hit subscribe, join our community, and let this story warm your heart. A blizzard swallowed the mountains of Montana in a restless, breathless white. Logan Pierce stood at the frost-rimmed window of his isolated cabin, the wind outside howling like a wounded creature. At 34, he possessed the carved strength of a soldier who had spent more than a decade in the United States Navy. Broad shoulders hardened by years of physical trials, a square jaw dusted with dark stubble, and storm-gray eyes that held more memories than peace. His skin, lightly tanned even in winter, bore faint scars beneath his shirt, each a story etched by survival rather than pride. He was tall, powerful in frame, disciplined down to the smallest gesture, the kind of man whose posture alone revealed an entire lifetime of military conditioning. He moved silently, efficiently, weighing his decisions with the cool steadiness of someone trained to function under extreme pressure. Yet beneath that hard exterior, an invisible fracture ran deep. A past mission gone wrong had taken two teammates he couldn't save, and since then, something in him had dimmed. He no longer smiled easily. He no longer trusted the world to give anything without taking something back. On the wooden floor beside him lay Shadow, his 6-year-old Belgian Malinois, a dog built of lean muscle and fierce intelligence. Shadow's coat was a sleek blend of charcoal and rust, and a pale streak ran down his muzzle like an old battle scar from a mission overseas. His amber eyes glowed with alertness, the eyes of a creature that understood danger intimately and loyalty even more. Shadow was a K-9 trained for special operations, breach entries, scent tracking, rapid response under gunfire, and unlike Logan, Shadow had not lost his purpose. The dog lived for vigilance, for service, for the bond they shared that had been forged in deserts and chaos far from these mountains. The fire crackled weakly as Logan adjusted a log. Outside, the wind carried a strange rhythm, something beyond the natural roar of the storm. He dismissed it at first. Mountains produced sounds that played tricks on even the toughest men. But Shadow's ears twitched sharply. The dog rose, tail stiff, muscles tense beneath his fur. Logan's breath stilled. Shadow did not react to nothing. "What is it, boy?" Logan whispered, his voice deep, steady, but touched by an unease he rarely allowed himself to feel. Shadow took 3 steps toward the door, head low, body poised between instinct and command. The sound came again, a faint, thin cry, almost swallowed by snow. Logan's pulse tightened. It was distant, fragile, but unmistakably human. Without hesitation, he grabbed his heavy coat and slung it over his muscular frame. He zipped it quickly, the movement precise, controlled, automatic. Shadow waited by the door, shifting from paw to paw with an urgency that mirrored the rising tension in Logan's chest. He strapped on a flashlight, tightened the laces of his boots, and opened the door to a wall of white wind. The storm struck him like a physical blow, ice biting instantly at his skin. Shadow leapt forward, paws sinking deep into the snow. Logan followed, boots crunching loudly in the frigid darkness. The cold wrapped around him like an anchor, but he pushed through. Guided by the sharp beam of his flashlight and the steady silhouette of Shadow carving a path ahead. The cry came again, slightly louder now, and Logan's chest tightened. It was the sound of someone small, someone scared, someone desperate. Shadow barked once, sharply, then sprinted toward the tree line. Logan followed without hesitation. Every instinct honed from years of combat surged awake, scanning the terrain, assessing danger, listening between heartbeats for threats hidden in the trees. They reached a cluster of tall pines where the wind howled between the trunks like trapped spirits. Shadow stopped abruptly, nose pointed upward, body rigid. Logan swept the flashlight low, and his breath caught. At the base of a tree, Curled into a trembling mass was a boy, no older than 8, clutching 2 tiny puppies against his chest. Snow had crusted on his clothes and his small fingers were purple with cold. His face, rounded with youth but hollowed by fear, was half buried in the fur of the puppies. His eyes fluttered weakly at the light. Jesus! Logan crouched, his breath forming a cloud in the freezing air. Kid? Can you hear me? The boy blinked slowly, unfocused. He had dark brown hair matted by snow, pale skin drained of warmth, and chapped lips that trembled with every shallow breath. He wore a thin jacket, far too thin for the brutal storm, and boots that looked at least 2 sizes too big. Shadow approached slowly, sniffing the puppies. The tiny creatures, no older than 6 or 7 weeks, whimpered faintly. One had a patch of white on its forehead, the other a darker coat with shaking paws tucked tight against its belly. Logan gently touched the boy's shoulder. He expected flinching or fear, but the child only whispered, "Cold, please." His voice cracked like fragile glass. "You're safe now," Logan said firmly, lifting the boy into his arms. The child was frighteningly light, too light. Logan wrapped him inside his coat, placing the puppies inside as well. Their small bodies pressed desperately to any warmth they could find. Shadow circled protectively, his presence strong, steady, certain. As Logan started back, the boy spoke again, barely audible. I don't remember why?" His brows pinched as if the truth hurt to touch. I didn't get lost." Logan's gut tightened. Something about the boy's tone, fractured and confused. Pride at an old wound in his own heart. The feeling of losing someone and not knowing how to undo the moment that broke everything. "It's okay," Logan murmured. "Don't talk, just stay awake." They trudged back through the storm, Logan's muscles burning from the added weight. Yet he moved with relentless purpose. Shadow trotted close, body shielding them from gusts of icy wind. Inside the cabin, warmth hit them like a saving grace. Logan laid the boy gently on a cot near the fire, wrapping him in thick blankets. The puppies he set beside him, their small bodies trembling beneath the wool. Shadow lay close, offering his own heat. Logan knelt and examined the child. The boy's heartbeat was weak but present, his breathing shallow but steadying. The puppies whimpered softly, curling into the blankets. Logan's jaw clenched. He spoke softly, mostly to himself. "Who leaves a kid out there in this?" But no answer came, only the fire crackling and the storm groaning outside. The boy opened his eyes slowly. "Sir, I don't remember why I'm here." Logan felt something stir in him, a mix of anger, protectiveness, and fear. Fear for a child he had found only minutes ago, yet somehow felt responsible for already. "You're safe," he said again. "We'll figure out the rest later." Shadow rested his head on Logan's knee as if agreeing, and though Logan didn't know it yet, tonight's rescue would unravel a chain of danger far greater than anything he had left behind in war. But for now, as the storm raged against the walls, all he could do was protect the 3 fragile lives that fate, for whatever cruel reason, had dropped at his doorstep. And in the dim light of the cabin, as the fire warmed their frozen bodies, Logan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The kind a soldier doesn't choose. The kind that chooses him. Morning rose slowly over Montana, a weak silver light struggling against the thick quilt of clouds that still clung to the mountains. The storm had eased but not departed. Its echo lay heavy in the air, like breath held too long. Inside the wooden cabin, Logan Pierce sat near the fire, his broad figure hunched slightly as exhaustion from the long night pressed into his muscles. His dark hair was still damp from melted snow, brushing the collar of his shirt, and his jaw bore the shadow of new stubble, a rough edge that matched the turmoil behind his gray eyes. Across from him, Evan finally stirred under a pile of blankets. The boy's eyelids fluttered, his small face pale but warmer than the night before. He looked fragile, like something the storm had carved out of fear and left behind without explanation. Logan watched him quietly. The way a soldier watches a wounded comrade, not with panic, but with steady vigilance. Evan blinked weakly. Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, trembled with both confusion and a fear he couldn't name. Logan answered gently, though his tone carried the firmness of someone who had learned to stay calm for others, even when he himself felt none. "You're safe. My name's Logan. This is my cabin. I found you in the storm last night." The boy's brows tightened. I don't remember how I got there." "It's okay. Don't force it." Logan didn't press further. He recognized trauma when he saw it. Some memories were locked away by the mind itself as protection. Near the fireplace, Shadow lifted his head. The Belgian Malinois, always alert, observed the boy with quiet intensity. He rose slowly and approached, his powerful body moving with disciplined grace, his ears perked yet relaxed. Evan reached out a timid hand. Shadow sniffed it before nudging the boy gently, granting his silent acceptance. A faint smile flickered across Evan's lips. Fragile, but real. The two puppies, curled beside him in a flannel blanket, slept soundly, their tiny chests rising and falling in soft rhythms. Logan stood, stretching his tall frame, muscles tightening beneath his shirt. He had been awake most of the night, checking the boy's breathing, feeding the fire, and letting Shadow keep watch for any threat that might linger outside. "I need to go back out there," Logan said quietly to himself more than to Evan. "Storm's clearing. We might find something useful." Evan looked up with wide, anxious eyes. "You're leaving?" "Shadow's coming with me. I'll be back fast." Logan hesitated, surprising himself. He wasn't accustomed to explaining his actions to anyone. But something in Evan's voice tugged at a part of him long dormant. "You're safe here," he repeated. "I promise." Evan nodded, though the uncertainty didn't leave his face. Logan recalled being that age, small, scared, relying on promises made by adults who didn't always keep them. He would not be one of those adults. He grabbed his coat, gloves, and flashlight, then slung his pack onto his shoulder. Shadow trotted beside him, posture firm, every muscle taut with readiness. Logan glanced once more at the boy. "Lock the door behind me. I'll knock twice, then once. Don't open it for anyone else." Evan swallowed. "Okay." Logan stepped outside and the cold hit him like a stone to the chest. The wind from last night had carved long scars in the snow, leaving jagged patterns across the path. Shadow sniffed the air, his breath forming small clouds. Logan started toward the forest. It was time to understand what, or who, had left a child in a blizzard. The journey through the snow was slower than Logan hoped. Each step plunged deep, and every sound echoed strangely between the pines. Something about the silence felt wrong, too deliberate, too careful, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Shadow's body tightened the closer they drew to the spot where Evan had been found. Logan trusted that instinct. Shadow didn't spook easily. When they reached the pine tree, Logan knelt and swept aside the new layer of snow that had fallen since the storm weakened. Beneath it lay the remnants of the night before, small footprints, almost erased, cradles in the snow where the puppies had curled beside Evan, and marks of something heavier. Logan's jaw tightened. "These aren't from Evan," he murmured. The prints were broad, deep, and deliberately spaced, made by boots. Adult boots, moving with heavy purpose, military-grade patterning, used by security contractors or certain armed groups. Logan followed the trail a few feet before noticing an indentation in the snow, shaped like a long, rectangular object. He brushed it away. A faded canvas bag lay half-buried, torn along the seams. Its material was industrial, designed to withstand weight and weather. But what caught Logan's attention was the logo stamped on the side. North Star Transit Logistics. He knew that name. Everyone in the region did. A transport company with rumors of involvement in questionable shipments, illegal wildlife transfers, and smuggling operations that crossed state borders under the guise of private delivery contracts. Shadow growled softly. Logan scanned the area further and discovered tire tracks, large ones, clearly from a heavy-duty vehicle. They led away from the forest and toward the main road, now buried beneath the snow but unmistakable to someone trained to read terrain. Logan's throat tightened. Someone had brought Evan here and left him to die. Not lost, abandoned. Worse, disposed of. Logan's pulse slowed deliberately in the way it did when he needed to think with precision. He crouched lower, analyzing direction, weight distribution, stride length. Two adults, one moving faster than the other, one carrying something heavy, perhaps the bag before it tore. No signs of a struggle near the tree, which meant Evan had not fought back. Either he was unconscious or he trusted whoever brought him. That possibility made Logan's stomach twist. Shadow lifted his head, ears flattening. Logan heard it too, the distant rumble of an engine. Not from the mountain road. This sound came from below, nearer to the town. He and Shadow exchanged a glance. That silent communication forged through years of combat. "Let's move." They headed back with urgency, navigating through deep snow until the cabin came into view. Logan's heart eased when he saw the door still closed. Inside, Evan sat on the floor with the two puppies in his lap. He looked up quickly, relief flooding his young face. "You came back. Told you I would." Logan took off his gloves, knelt beside the boy, and spoke gently. "Evan, do you remember anything? Even a little thing?" Evan frowned hard, his small hands tightening around the puppies. "I remember a truck. Big. White maybe. And voices. Two men. One was angry." Logan felt a chill not caused by the cold. "Did you see their faces?" Evan shook his head. "They told me to stop crying. They said I shouldn't have been there. And then something hit me." "Hit you?" Logan's voice softened but couldn't hide the iron beneath. Evan touched the back of his head, wincing slightly. "I think so. Everything went dark." Logan closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back the rising heated anger. People who hurt children awakened a darkness in him deeper than anything war had carved. Shadow sensed his growing tension and pressed against his leg. Logan steadied his breath. He couldn't lose control, not in front of Evan. A knock came suddenly. Firm, heavy, not the pattern Logan had taught Evan. Logan's entire posture changed. His shoulders straightened, his jaw set, and a cold calculation sharpened his eyes. He signaled Evan to stay quiet. Shadow positioned himself near the boy, teeth bared silently, ready. The knock came again. Then a man's voice muffled by the thick cabin door. "Anyone home? Car trouble. Need assistance." Logan knew that tone. Too practiced. Too casual. He approached the window silently and looked out through a thin sliver in the curtains. Two men stood outside. One tall, muscular, with a thick brown beard and a scar running from his left cheek to the corner of his jaw. His nose was crooked, clearly broken at least once. His jacket was black, military style, and his posture carried the rigid stance of someone accustomed to force. The second man was leaner, shorter, with narrow eyes and thinning blonde hair, slicked back beneath a knit cap. Both had boots with the same tread pattern Logan saw near the tree. He stepped away from the window. His gut confirmed what his brain already knew. These were not travelers, not victims of car trouble. They were hunters. "Shadow," Logan whispered. The dog lowered his body, muscles coiling. Logan straightened and called through the door, his voice flat, controlled, unwelcoming. "Road's clear. You can keep moving." The taller man chuckled, but it was a humorless sound. "We're actually looking for something. Maybe you've seen it." Logan said nothing. "A delivery," the tall man continued, "went missing in the storm. Small. Valuable." Logan's blood went cold. Delivery. Valuable. They meant Evan and the puppies. "Haven't seen anything," Logan replied. The shorter man stepped closer, his boots crunching in the snow. "Mind if we come inside? Just to warm up." "I do mind." Silence fell, sharp, taut. Logan could feel their eyes burning into the door. The taller man muttered something too low for words to form, then said louder, "Well then, be safe up here, friend." Their footsteps retreated. Logan didn't relax. He knew men like them didn't give up. They regrouped. They waited. They returned stronger. He turned to Evan. The boy clutched the puppies, fear widening his eyes again. Logan knelt, resting a large, steady hand on Evan's shoulder. "They won't get you. Not while I'm here." And in that moment, standing in his cabin, feeling danger circling like wolves, Logan understood. This wasn't an accident. Evan had been left with intention. Someone wanted him gone. Someone dangerous. Someone close. The storm hadn't brought the boy to Logan. It had hidden him long enough for Logan to find him first. And now the hunters were coming. Night fell over the mountains like a curtain of pitch-black velvet, thick enough to swallow sound and hope alike. The storm had not returned in full force, but a restless wind prowled around the cabin, brushing snow against the wooden walls in long, icy strokes. Inside, Logan Pierce stood near the front window, every nerve in his body coiled tight. He could feel something moving in the dark, something deliberate, something hunting. He had lived through enough ambushes to recognize the silence before danger. It was the same stillness that filled a battlefield right before a breach, the kind that pressed against the ribs like a warning whispered by instinct rather than reason. Shadow sat at Logan's side, muscles stiff beneath his fur, his dark amber eyes fixed on the door. The dog's breathing was steady, but his posture was ready for an instant shift from calm to combat. Logan placed a hand on Shadow's back, feeling the tension there, a mirror of his own. "Easy," he murmured. "We'll handle whatever comes." He spoke with the flat calm of a trained warrior, but deep inside something far heavier churned. He was responsible for a child now, a child who slept on the cot near the fire with two small puppies curled beside him. The weight of that responsibility dug deeper than any mission he had carried in the Navy. Losing teammates had carved scars across his heart, but losing a child, the thought itself was unbearable. He checked the locks once more, then moved silently across the room, grabbing the flashlight, his knife, and the handgun he kept holstered beneath a stack of firewood. The motion was practiced, smooth, almost ritualistic. War had taught him not only how to fight, but how to prepare for fighting long before the first blow landed. He kept the lights low to avoid casting silhouettes against the windows. The fire flickered softly, illuminating Evan's face with a warm glow. The boy lay stretched under a heavy blanket, one hand resting on the puppy with the white patch. Even in sleep, Evan's brows were drawn together, as if nightmares tugged at the fragile threads of his memory. Logan's chest tightened. Whatever had happened to the boy before Logan found him was bound to be dark. Shadow stiffened suddenly, ears lifting sharply. Logan froze. He knew that change in posture. It was not curiosity, not confusion, but recognition of an approaching threat. Logan lowered his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you hear, boy?" Shadow didn't bark. He didn't even growl. He simply moved toward the door with slow, precise steps, head low, tail straight. Logan grabbed his gun and moved alongside him. Wind brushed against the cabin walls again, but now Logan could hear something beneath it. Footsteps crunching through snow. Not the stride of a hiker or hunter, not the aimless pattern of someone lost. This was coordinated movement, a team. Logan extinguished the lantern, bathing the cabin in darkness except for the fireplace's faint glow. His breathing slowed to a soldier's rhythm, controlled, calculated. A knock came, firm, sudden. Not the hesitant knock of someone seeking help, but the entitled pound of a man who believed he had a right to enter. Logan did not speak. A voice broke the silence. Deep, commanding. A voice he recognized from the earlier encounter. "Open the door, friend. We need to finish our conversation." Logan felt heat prick at the back of his neck, a mixture of anger and impending violence. He held the gun close to his thigh. "Not a chance," he muttered low enough that only Shadow could hear. Another voice, thinner and mocking, followed. "We know what you have in there. Give us the boy and the dogs and we walk away. No hard feelings." Logan's jaw flexed. "They're not yours," he said sharply, "and they're not leaving with you." Silence thickened outside. Then footsteps split into multiple directions. Logan's pulse slowed even further. They were surrounding the cabin. He moved to the back window and spotted a tall silhouette moving between the trees. The man was broad-shouldered, wearing a thick winter coat, his breath forming clouds in the cold. Another shape appeared closer to the cabin, slimmer, faster, carrying something metallic in his hand. Logan's grip tightened on the gun. He recognized the pattern, one man to distract, another to infiltrate, a classic flanking maneuver. Shadow began to growl, a low rumble that vibrated against the wooden floor. "Stay close," Logan whispered. Then the first blow hit the door, hard, forceful, enough to crack the outer hinge. Evan jolted awake with a small gasp, hugging the puppies instinctively. "Logan! What? What's happening?" Logan didn't look back. "Stay down. Stay quiet. Don't move unless I tell you." Another hit. The wood splintered slightly. "Last warning," the deep voice outside yelled. "Open up and hand them over, or we burn that cabin down." Logan made a quick calculation. Fire, smoke, snow piled high against the lower walls. These men weren't bluffing. They were desperate. That made them more dangerous. "Shadow," Logan whispered, signaling a command. The dog moved into position beside the door, ready to strike as soon as it opened. The next blow shattered the side window instead. Glass burst inward, scattering across the floor in deadly glitter. Logan pivoted instantly, gun raised. A gloved hand reached through the broken opening, fumbling for the latch. Logan fired a warning shot deliberately close, enough to scare but not kill. The hand yanked back. Outside, the man cursed loudly. Someone shouted, "Screw this! Push in!" 3 bodies slammed into the door at once. It burst open, snow and cold air surging into the cabin. Logan fired again, grazing the frame inches from the intruders' heads. "Shadow, go!" The dog shot forward like a bolt of living muscle, teeth bared, launching directly at the first man who crossed the threshold. The tall man fell backward, shouting as Shadow clamped onto his arm with trained precision. Logan charged forward, striking the second man in the throat with the butt of his gun. The intruder collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The third man stepped in from the side, swinging a metal crowbar at Logan's head. Logan ducked, the bar slicing above him. He rammed his shoulder into the attacker's ribs, using his weight to drive him into the wall. The cabin shook with the impact. Logan's strength was raw, forged from years of conditioning, but his technique was what made him lethal. Efficient, ruthless, calm under fire. Shadow dragged the tall man outside, the snow turning dark beneath them as the dog maintained his hold. Logan struck the second man again, knocking him unconscious. The third man swung the crowbar once more, catching Logan's shoulder. Pain shot down his arm, but he didn't falter. He twisted, grabbing the man's wrist, using the attacker's momentum to flip him onto the ground. The crowbar clattered across the floor. Outside, one of the attackers yelled, "Fall back! Get out! We regroup!" Logan rushed to the doorway just in time to see 2 silhouettes sprinting into the forest. The tall, bearded man stumbled after them, clutching his wounded arm where Shadow had bitten deep. Logan raised his gun, but the men disappeared into the trees, swallowed by darkness and snow. He lowered his weapon slowly, chest heaving, muscles trembling from strain and adrenaline. Shadow returned to his side, panting, blood on his muzzle, not his own. Logan knelt beside him, placing a steady hand on the dog's neck. "Good boy. You saved us." Inside, Evan huddled near the fire, holding the puppies close. Tears streaked his cheeks, but he tried to hide them, breathing in shaky gulps. Logan approached, lowering himself to meet the boy's eyes. "It's over," he said softly. "For now." Evan clung to the words, but fear still flickered through him. "Will they come back?" Logan hesitated only a moment. "Yes, they will." But he forced a steady calm into his voice. "And I'll be ready when they do." He stood and surveyed the damage. The door barely hung on a hinge. The window was shattered. Snow littered the floor, but the cabin still stood, and they were all alive. That was enough for tonight. Still, a weight settled deep in Logan's chest. The men had been bold, organized, unafraid of confrontation. They wanted Evan for a reason strong enough to risk everything, and they would return with more. Logan looked out into the dark tree line, feeling the cold seep beneath his skin. The night hid too many secrets, and one of them was coming for them again. Logan Pierce moved through the snow with a steady determination that fought against the ache in his muscles and the memory of the night's violence still clinging to his skin. Dawn hadn't broken fully yet. The sky was a muted wash of gray, as if even the sun hesitated to rise over a land where danger stalked so closely. Shadow walked ahead, paws silent on the snow, sniffing the faintest disturbances in the cold air. Evan lay wrapped in a thick blanket in Logan's arms, still trembling from the ordeal. though exhaustion had pulled him into a restless sleep. The two puppies were tucked inside Logan's coat for warmth, tiny bodies pressed against his chest like fragile heartbeats. The wind blew sharp and thin, cutting across Logan's face, but he pushed forward. He needed help, not from law enforcement that would take hours to reach them, even in perfect weather, but from someone who understood these mountains as deeply as he did danger. Grace Whitmore. She lived a mile down the valley, alone in a modest cabin beside a small frozen creek. Logan had known her only in passing, the way people in isolated towns exchange nods without exchanging lives. But her reputation was one of quiet resilience and unwavering compassion. She had been a mountain rescue worker for nearly 2 decades before losing her husband in a climbing accident that left her with a grief too heavy to heal, but not heavy enough to crush her purpose. People said she survived the sorrow not by forgetting, but by tending to others who wandered broken like she once had. Logan did not like asking for help. Years in the Navy had carved a habit of self-reliance so deep it felt like bone. But tonight, the weight he carried was not meant for one man alone. Grace's cabin came into view as the wind thinned. Smoke rose from the chimney in a steady ribbon, warm against the cold world. Logan approached the porch and knocked once, then twice, more softly than he intended. A moment later, the door opened, revealing a slender woman in her late 40s. Grace Whitmore stood tall despite her small frame, her shoulders straight, her chin lifted with an air of quiet authority. She had long, silver-streaked chestnut hair tied back loosely, and a face shaped by both kindness and hardship. Fine lines traced her forehead and the corners of her green eyes that held a strange mixture of sorrow and fierce gentleness. Her skin was pale from years in the cold, but strong, unbroken. She wore a wool sweater, thick leggings, and sturdy boots, and even in the dim morning light she carried the presence of someone who could navigate any storm without losing her footing. "Logan?" she asked, surprise flickering in her expression. "What on earth?" Her gaze fell to the sleeping child in his arms, then to the puppies, then to Shadow standing behind him like a silent guardian. Whatever questions she had disappeared, replaced by instinctive decisiveness. "Come inside," she said firmly. The warmth of her home washed over him as he stepped in. The walls were lined with maps, ropes, climbing gear, and shelves of books about wilderness survival. A cast-iron stove glowed in the corner, bathing the room in golden light. Grace closed the door quickly, locking it, before turning to face him. "Put the boy by the fire," she instructed, "and tell me what happened." Logan set Evan gently on a thick rug near the stove, letting the heat wrap around him. Shadow lay beside the child immediately, offering warmth with his body. Grace knelt beside Evan, assessing his breathing, checking for injuries with the practiced movements of someone who had handled countless rescues. "He's freezing," she murmured, "but stable." She looked up at Logan. "Start talking." Logan took a deep breath, his broad chest rising and falling as he recounted everything. Finding Evan in the storm, the torn canvas bag, the military-grade footprints, the men who came to the cabin, their demand for the boy. Grace listened without interrupting, her brows knitting tightly together as the story grew darker. When he finished, silence settled between them for a long moment. "That child didn't wander out there by accident," she said at last, her voice low but steady. "Someone wanted him gone." Logan nodded. "And they're coming back. They'll bring more men. Better armed, better prepared." "And you came here because," she prompted gently. "Because I need to get him somewhere safe before they return," Logan said. "And you're the only person I trust around here?" Grace held his gaze. Logan was a mountain of a man, with a hardened exterior and eyes that seemed carved from steel, but she saw something else beneath. The echo of a man who had once protected lives without question, and who now fought to remember he was still capable of it. She stood slowly. "There's an old church at the foot of the ridge. No one goes there in winter. The walls are thick stone, and the basement was built as a shelter during an avalanche season years ago. You can stay there until we figure out our next move." Logan nodded with relief he didn't voice. "Thank you. But we won't stay long," Grace added, her tone turning sharper. "Those men are dangerous. They won't stop. We need to understand why." As if responding to her words, Evan stirred, eyes fluttering open. He looked around, confused but calmer than before. Grace smiled softly at him, her expression warm, maternal. "Hi there, sweetheart. I'm Grace. You're safe now." Evan swallowed. "Are they coming back?" Grace brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "Not right now, but we'll protect you." The boy hesitated before whispering, "I remember something." Logan knelt beside him. "What is it?" Evan held tightly to the puppy with the white patch, pressing his face into its fur for comfort. "I remember my mom. She was running. She told me not to let go of the puppies. She said men were coming, men who wanted to hurt us." His voice cracked. "They caught us near a truck. They took me away. But, but they didn't take her. She tried to fight them. I heard her scream." His eyes filled with tears. "She's still out there." Logan felt the heavy click of a lock forming around a new purpose inside him. The protective instinct that had been simmering since he found the boy sharpened into something burning. He met Grace's eyes. "We're going after her." Grace studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then we'll need Shadow." She reached out to stroke the dog's head. Shadow pressed into her touch, his breathing steady, as if sensing the gravity of what lay ahead. Shadow was nearly 7 years old now, built from years of training and loyalty, a creature of disciplined instincts and unwavering courage. His coat shimmered in shades of bronze and black in the firelight, and his ears twitched at every sound. Logan touched the dog's collar. "Think you can track the scent from last night?" Shadow answered with a short, confident bark. Grace stood and grabbed her coat from a hook on the wall. "I'll lead you to the church first. You and the boy stay there tonight. At dawn, we'll start the search." Logan shook his head. "No, we start now. Every hour she's out there is an hour too long." Grace hesitated, weighing the risks. The storm had weakened but not vanished. The light was dim, and the terrain ahead was treacherous. But she also saw the urgency in Logan's eyes, the same urgency she once saw in her husband during mountain rescues, a kind of fierce resolve that refused to wait for safety when lives hung in the balance. "Fine," she said finally, "but we take the lower trail. Less wind exposure." She prepared quickly, a backpack with medical supplies, rope, water, flares. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had spent years saving stranded climbers and lost hikers. When she was ready, she turned to Logan. "We walk, quietly, and stay together." Logan wrapped Evan more securely in a blanket and tied it around himself so the boy rested against his chest. Evan clung to the puppies, who whined softly but stayed still. Grace led the way out into the snow, her steps sure and practiced. Shadow stayed ahead, nose low, searching for familiar traces. They moved through the valley, cutting between pines that creaked under the weight of ice. The air tasted of cold metal and lingering danger. Halfway down the trail, Shadow stiffened. He sniffed one patch of snow intensely, then barked low. Logan knelt beside him and brushed aside the fresh powder. Beneath it lay a footprint, a smaller one than the men's, likely a woman's. Grace crouched beside them. "Recent," she said. "Less than 12 hours." "She's alive," Evan whispered into Logan's chest, hope trembling inside his voice. "Shadow found her trail." Logan nodded, but Grace touched his arm gently. "This isn't a full track. It's one sign. We follow it now, and we risk running straight into the men who took her. We need to get Evan hidden first." Logan inhaled sharply, fighting the instinct to push forward, to chase danger head-on. But Evan's small weight against him was a constant reminder. This mission was no longer about him alone. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "To the church." They reached the old church an hour later. It stood weathered and solemn, built of gray stone that had endured decades of winters. Tall, arched windows were boarded up, and the heavy door creaked as Grace pushed it open. Inside, cold air swept across wooden pews coated in frost. Candles from old services still lined the altar, untouched. The basement door was behind the pulpit. Grace led them down a set of narrow stone steps into a low-ceilinged room insulated by thick walls. A few blankets and emergency supplies remained from an old avalanche shelter system. It wasn't comfortable, but it was safe. Logan placed Evan on a cot and tucked the puppies beside him. Evan looked up, eyes wide but braver than before. "You'll find her?" he asked softly. Logan knelt beside him, resting a hand on the boy's small shoulder. "I will. I promise you." Shadow rested his head on Logan's knee, as if vowing the same. Grace stepped back, watching the scene unfold with quiet understanding. "We leave as soon as he sleeps," she said softly. "Shadow will guide us." Logan nodded. Purpose settled into his bones, a purpose he had not felt since the days when saving lives was his duty, not a choice. Now it was his heart that compelled him forward. As Evan drifted into sleep, Logan rose and whispered to Shadow, "Find her." The dog lifted his head, eyes glowing with devotion and certainty. Grace tightened her scarf and opened the cellar door. The cold wind rushed in again, bringing with it the faint, distant scent of danger and hope. Logan followed her into the dark. Shadow leads the way. The sky above the Montana ridge was a deep indigo, fading slowly toward the first pale strokes of morning. The cold carried a sharper edge now, cleaner and more precise, as if the night had been holding its breath for this exact moment. When Logan Pierce, Shadow at his side and Grace Whitmore behind them, advanced into the mountain's higher reaches with a single purpose burning in their chests. The snow crunched beneath Logan's boots in slow, deliberate rhythm, each step forward almost ritualistic. His breath formed steady clouds in the icy air. His tall, muscular frame cut a dark silhouette against the white terrain, shoulders squared, posture rigid with determination. The scars beneath his clothing, old and new, seemed to hum with memory of battles fought, lives lost, promises made. And this mission, unlike so many before, held something deeply personal. A mother and child were waiting. He would not fail them. Shadow trotted slightly ahead, nose low, tail stiff, ears flicking constantly at the faintest sound. His dark coat shimmered under the early dawn light, sleek, powerful, shaped by years of disciplined training. There was a steadiness in the way he moved, a confidence that came from a life lived in service, and a connection with Logan that didn't need words. Grace followed behind them, her breath quickening but her steps unwavering. Though she was slender and not as strong as Logan, she possessed the physical grit of someone who had fought both mountain storms and personal storms. Her chestnut hair with silver strands peeked beneath her wool cap, and her face, lined with loss, held the steady fire of someone who refused to be broken again. She carried her medical kit and a small hatchet strapped to her belt. "Shadow's picking up pace," she said softly. "We're close." Logan nodded. "I can feel it." The trail wound steeply upward, the wind growing stronger as they climbed. The storm had carved drifts along the path, and the trees rose like dark sentinels watching their ascent. The sky began to brighten behind them, each stroke of light painting the snow with hints of peach and gold. But none of them looked back. Their focus was ahead, where Shadow suddenly froze. Logan halted instantly. The dog's muscles tightened beneath his fur, his head lowering, nostrils flaring. Logan recognized that shift before Shadow even issued a sound. The dog had scent locked onto something. Someone. "You've got her, boy?" Logan whispered. Shadow gave a low, steady bark. They pushed forward through a thicket of pines where the wind had carved narrow corridors between the trees. And there beyond a shallow ridge they saw it, the hidden camp. The makeshift settlement stood in a bowl of land naturally sheltered from above. Several canvas tents, large metal crates, and portable heaters formed a crude but functional base. The footprints in the snow were fresh. Smoke drifted from a barrel fire in the center, where shadows of men moved between crates stacked with cages. Inside the cages, Logan caught sight of frightened animals, dogs, foxes, even two rare mountain lynxes, pacing restlessly. His hands tightened into fists. And then he saw her, a woman bound to a wooden post near the largest tent. Her build was lean and tired, her frame shaking from cold, her long dark hair tangled around her face. Even from a distance, Logan could detect the fierce protective energy in her posture, the way her chin tilted slightly upward despite the bruises marring her cheek. Evan's mother. She was alive. "Grace," Logan whispered, "take cover behind that ridge. If anything happens to me, get to the federal station in town." Grace nodded, jaw tight. "Be careful. These men aren't amateurs." "Neither am I." Shadow stayed low against the ground, ears twitching, waiting for Logan's cue. Logan scanned the camp. 4 men visible, maybe more inside the tents. They carried rifles, heavy coats, and faces carved in cruelty. One man in particular stood out, a tall figure with a thick beard and a shaved head, his features sharp like the edges of broken stone. His coat was military grade, his posture rigid, and an ugly scar cut through his right eyebrow. Logan recognized him instantly. He was the one who tried forcing his way into the cabin. Their eyes met even at this distance, as if the man sensed Logan before seeing him. A slow smile crawled across the bearded man's face. "So you came." Logan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The wind shifted. A tent flap opened. Another man emerged. Leaner, twitchy movements, thinning blonde hair. He carried a crowbar still stained with rust and something darker. He looked angry, desperate. "Where's the boy?" he shouted. "Bring him here and maybe she lives." Logan's voice came out low, steady, lethal. "Let her go. You're done." The bearded man laughed. "We're just getting started." Before Logan could respond, Shadow leapt forward like a streak of bronze lightning. He closed the distance in seconds, lunging at the blonde man with terrifying precision. The camp exploded into chaos. "Cover him!" Logan barked to Grace, who ducked behind a crate and opened her medical pack to retrieve a flare. Logan charged into the fray, moving with the lethal efficiency of a trained Navy operative. The bearded leader swung his rifle toward Logan, but didn't get the chance to fire. Logan slammed into him, knocking the weapon aside. They grappled, their breaths clashing in white clouds. The man was strong, shoulders thick with muscle. But Logan was stronger, fueled by purpose, rage, and something deeper than survival. Shadow fought like a creature born from instinct and loyalty. He latched onto the blond man's forearm, bringing him to the ground. The man screamed, trying to pry the dog off, but Shadow held firm, using controlled pressure, never losing discipline, even in fury. Logan threw a punch that cracked across the bearded man's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Another attacker rushed him from the side, but Logan pivoted, driving his knee into the man's ribs before landing a sharp elbow to the temple. The attacker collapsed. The bearded man recovered quickly, wiping blood from his lip. "You think this ends with you walking out?" he snarled. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Logan's voice was ice. "I don't care who you are." He swung again, but the man dodged and tackled Logan into the snow. The two rolled, exchanging blows. The man grabbed a knife from his belt and lunged. Logan caught his wrist mid-strike, muscles bulging, veins burning beneath his skin. Shadows from their struggle danced across the snow like flickering ghosts. With a surge of strength, Logan twisted the man's arm, forcing him onto his back. The knife dropped. Blade or no blade, Logan knew this enemy wouldn't surrender. So he struck hard, once, twice, until the man stopped fighting, dazed but alive. Logan rose, chest heaving, breath burning in the cold air. He didn't enjoy the violence, but he didn't hesitate either. Protecting the innocent required choices that weren't clean. Shadow now stood guard over the blond man, who lay trembling and defeated. Logan whistled sharply. "Guard!" Shadow obeyed instantly, positioning himself over the man with bared teeth. Logan turned toward Evan's mother. She watched with wide eyes, fear, disbelief, and hope entangled in her expression. Logan hurried to her, cutting the rope with a swift motion. "Evan?" she gasped immediately. "Is he—" "He's safe," Logan said softly. "He's waiting for you." She collapsed against him for a brief moment, her thin body shaking from exhaustion and cold. Her skin was pale, dotted with bruises, but her eyes, brown and bright, held fierce resolve. She was stronger than the world expected her to be. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving my son." Logan steadied her. "Let's get you out of here." Grace emerged from behind the ridge, rushing over with a blanket. She wrapped the woman gently, her face filled with relief. "You're safe now," Grace assured her. Logan moved swiftly through the camp, freeing the caged animals. Dogs bounded out, whimpering and licking his hands. Foxes paced anxiously. The lynxes hissed at first, but moved toward freedom. Grace assisted him while keeping steady watch. The operation was nearly finished when the distant rumble of engines echoed through the valley. Logan's muscles tightened. More men? But as the vehicles drew closer, the colors of the markings became clear. Federal agents. Grace exhaled deeply. They must have picked up the distress flare you fired, Logan said. Grace nodded. Good. Agents flooded into the camp, securing the criminals, gathering evidence, and checking on the animals. Logan stood with Shadow by his side, watching as Evan's mother was escorted to safety. Her eyes met his once more, filled with gratitude deeper than words. Logan felt something loosen inside him, something that had been coiled in grief and guilt for years. Hours later, sunlight washed the mountains in bright gold. At the edge of town, Evan ran into his mother's arms, sobbing into her coat. She held him tightly, whispering into his hair. The puppies were adopted immediately by a kind local couple who promised to raise them with love. Grace watched the reunion with misty eyes. You gave them their life back, she murmured to Logan. He shook his head. No, they saved mine. As days passed, Logan found himself no longer isolated. The townspeople, once strangers, greeted him with warmth. They thanked him, honored him, called him a hero. Logan didn't think of himself that way, but Shadow became a quiet legend, the dog whose courage spread across the community. With Grace's encouragement, Logan helped establish a small rescue center in town, a place for injured, abandoned, or mistreated animals, a place where Shadow oversaw the younger pups with gentle authority, a place where healing was possible for both animals and the people who cared for them. One morning, as Logan trained the two puppies, showing them basic commands while Shadow watched like a proud mentor, Grace stepped beside him. Looks like Dawn came back for you, she said softly. Logan let a rare smile touch his lips. Yeah, he whispered, eyes warm as the sunlight spilled across the snow. It did, and for the first time in years, the weight inside him felt light. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder, shining angels, or voices from the clouds. Sometimes they come quietly, through the footprints of a loyal dog in the snow, the strength of a soldier who refuses to give up, or the heartbeat of a child who holds on just a little longer. In Logan's world, the miracle was not the storm that ended, nor the victory he won. It was the simple truth that light always finds its way back into the hearts we thought were already frozen. And so it is in our everyday lives. We face our own storms, fear, loneliness, hardship, and nights that feel too long. Yet somewhere in the middle of that darkness, a small act of kindness, a stranger's help, or even a whisper of faith can become the miracle that saves us. Remember this: you are never as lost as you think. You are never as forgotten as you fear. And God's light still knows your name. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and help us spread more stories of courage, redemption, and the quiet miracles that shape our lives. May God bless you, protect your family, and warm your heart wherever this video finds you. Amen.